Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Choose to Think podcast. I have this Mac Daddy conversation with Dr. Nancy Meyer. She wrote the book Defying Fear. You'll remember her back on episode 169, and I won't go in too much into that, but we talk about marriage. Marriage. It is a phenomenally encouraging and impactful conversation that we had today. She is absolutely delightful. She kind of has a way of cutting right through things and going right to the heart of the matter. I am so impressed with her and her courage, her vulnerability, what she shared on the show and what we shared. I talk about Jim and me, I should say, and she talks about her and her husband and remarriage. And we bat around a few ideas, a few toxic thoughts that we might have within that second marriage, within that relationship. But it's going to be a great episode for you if you're looking for a spouse, hoping to be married someday. If you're marrying for the second, the third time, it's going to be great. If you're currently married to the love of your life and you've been married for 40 years, it's going to be a great episode for you. So you stay tuned for this very organic, naturally evolving conversation that is really going to encourage your heart and inspire you to maybe change things up a little bit, maybe add a little bit of spark, maybe have an important conversation with your spouse. So without further ado, here is Dr. Nancy Meyer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Choose to Think Inspirational podcast. And I am just like grinning from ear to ear because we have a guest that you'll recognize on the show. It's Dr. Nancy Meyer. Welcome back, Nancy.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
We're going to have so much fun. And if you don't remember Nancy, or maybe you didn't tune in, it's episode 269 called Courage Unleashed. And do you happen to have a copy of your book right there, Nancy, that you can
I
show
do.
up? Yay. So this is what we talked about several episodes back, defying fear. I don't have my book anymore because I lent it to someone and it had all the sticky notes in it. And so she has it. She's been reading it. We've been chatting about it together. But anyway, everyone's going to want to go back and refresh on what that was all about. Such a powerful episode. So much wonderful feedback about that particular chat that we had. And so when Nancy and I were talking and we were wrapping things up before, we thought, we have a few common interests, and it seemed like it would be so helpful just to chat again about some of those. Nancy is very athletic. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Nancy, just to refresh everybody.
Well, so a little bit is I get one thing is that I do half Ironmans, but I
Yeah.
started when I was 53, which is like you're not supposed to do that. But God didn't tell, nobody told God what he was supposed to do. So I actually had to learn to swim. I knew how to float, but I actually had to learn to swim. And if you know, half Ironman is 1.2 mile swim, 56-mile bike ride, and 13.1 mile run. So I never, ran before more than a 5K, which is 3 miles before that. So, but go big or go home.
That's
But
right.
God does not set the limits. We set the limits. And I think that's my whole thing, defying fear. It's about triumph, not about trauma. And it shows all that, but overcoming and then, defying fear. And so I think it relates to pretty much everything. And I think we find more common for us. We're both competitive just a little bit.
Oh no, let's not talk about my
And,
competitiveness. Ugh.
but, that motivates you. That's okay. And it's everything good can be turned bad if we're not careful.
That's
And
right.
everything bad, God can turn good. So
Amen.
you got to focus on that. And
Amen. Well, in Nancy's story and in the book, if you snag that Defying Fear, you're going to read a lot about her previous marriage or allusions to that, let's say. And that was one of the common interests or connecting points that she and I actually have is we're both remarried. And so we thought it was fun. Matter of fact, here's part of an email that I sent to Nancy. And I said, I have an idea. Can we bat around some of those thoughts that we have in our heads and figure out a way to deal with them better? And I gave her a list of those. I'll read some of those in a moment. And then let's twist those, let's turn those to some life-giving biblical thoughts to engage instead of those negative ones. And what do you call your husband again? You said you had this one little phrase, like you never thought you would marry someone who was short and
Short and hairy.
hairy. I remembered that. Well, I mean, I have this picture of him. It's just like being this little miniature short and just very hairy now because of that.
Well, he's a surgeon too. He's retired now, and he's actually a colonel in the army too. So
Yeah.
he's a powerful person, but just down to earth. And
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
so
So we here, I mean, just to launch us into this, because Nancy and I really have not prepared much other than maybe praying beforehand and at least putting thought to this and say, oh, okay, here's a little bit of scaffolding that we can jump around on a little bit. But otherwise, this is a very organic, off the cuff kind of discussion and conversation that we're going to have today. And one of the negative thoughts or things that we may do when we are remarried is we may compare our current husband, the one we remarried, to our previous husband or spouse, and how dangerous that really may be. And I don't know, did you do that at all, Nancy, or is that kind of a moot point here? I don't really tend to do that. I think I know that that's kind of a no-no, but every now and again something may slip out like that. But can you think of a time, or does that ring a bell with you?
I
Or
mean, except for he's shorter than my ex, but but
okay,
I think it is, you can do comparisons, but even if you don't say it, if you do in your mind.
that's true. Yeah.
And I've had people say, he's, completely different from your ex in all ways. And
Mhm.
then also, they say he's a lot nicer, but I always say that's really not that much of a compliment. Hey, Poochies.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My
That's all right.
husband, speaking of, he's not here today. And usually he's always here when I'm recording. So he has the dogs. Come here, Ricky. Come here. Come
They're
here.
cute.
Yeah. Oh, one of them would come in a second. Hold up. I'm getting ready to go play pickleball.
Oh, what kind is that?
Okay. Hold on. I can't hear you if you said anything. Anyway, Rico is my
What
like, oh, my
what
barker.
kind is what kind is
He
he?
is a Maltese Yorkie
Okay.
mix, so he weighs 5 pounds. And
Oh,
talk about opposites, right? I have
right,
Rico right
right,
here, and you can't see Smokey, but Smokey's like a big, huge
right.
golden doodle, I think
Okay.
he is. So that was Jim's dog when we remarried, and this little one was my dog. And we often joke because they're so contrary, and it's a good symbol even for or analogy, I guess, like Rico is white, Smokey is black, Rico is tiny, Smokey is big, and yet we put these two dogs together and we had to kind of make this all work. And certainly in some ways, I have, I'm like white and Jim might be black and vice versa, even in some
Right.
of our attitudes. So it's always an interesting little analogy that we have these two dogs who are so contrary and we put them together just like God has put Jim and me together as well.
Well,
But
great example of,
yeah,
my husband and I are opposites. And that's the thing. They say opposites attract. But I think more what it is that opposites, bless each other. And
mm,
what you loved about the person can drive you crazy later, but you have to remember that's what you loved about them. And that's what you
mm.
need because God put you together for that. And I'm super outgoing. My husband's very calm, cool, collected, and he's definitely more introvert. So, but together it's a good balance. And just like your dogs, together they're a good balance.
That's right. That's right. Well, most days they do. Oh my
That's
gosh. It's like Rico, the little one, wants to totally dominate Smokey. It is so annoying. And somehow he thinks that, I may be little, but let me show you what it's all about. But, I sometimes marvel at how God did put Jim and me together because at first, I mean, oh, if only I write that book, we call it Non-Dating for Success. And because I went through this whole thing of, I don't know how to date. I was 20 years single, raising my kids basically. And I really didn't have any notion of how to actually do the dating thing. I didn't really want to do online stuff. Occasionally I would go to those online things. I'd put my name on there and this profile, and then I'd take it off because I was like, oh, that's so icky. And then 6 months would go by and I would just put it back on and then take it off. And I just didn't know how to do it. And at the point that I was personally ready for a relationship, I really didn't realize I was. I think I was at the point where, Nancy, I was just okay. I was okay being in my own skin, playing tennis, I didn't play pickleball then. I was playing tennis. That's how Jim and I met. But I was okay being single. I thought, Lord, you are my husband. You really are my husband. I am so blessed in my life. I have four amazing children who are now married. I'm having grandbabies. My parents live nearby. I've got a great family. We still celebrate Friday family fun night every Friday. Everybody comes on this house. And if everybody's here, it can be 18 people I'm trying to feed. I mean, I just felt I feel so blessed. But maybe, maybe I did want relationship again. And well, I know I did. I just didn't really focus on that too much. And I don't know what your story was about meeting your husband, how that even came about. Did you meet him in the medical field or how did y'all meet?
No. So a friend introduced us at
Okay.
my daughter's ball game, and her daughter was playing too. So she invited him to come watch, and then I think she was setting us up. But we became friends. We were friends for 3 years. We like did not even hold hands because I was like, I am never getting married again. No way, no how. But on what you said, I really believe that sometimes a lot of times women or men can do this too, as far as throw themselves at everybody instead of finding
Mm,
themselves first. And I believe until you find yourself and are content and happy with yourself with God, you won't really find that other person, not the
mm,
one that God intends you to find. Because you have
mhm,
to learn to love yourself enough to be with yourself instead of like, I got to have somebody. No, you don't. Do I think it's better to? Yes. But
me
some people
too.
don't, and that's good for them too. But
Mhm,
I think you have to learn to be content with yourself, like you said, and that's what you did. It sounds like
mhm.
you learned to be content. And I do think everybody, because I said I didn't want anybody, but deep down I did. I
I
wanted to be
know.
loved by somebody else. And I think you have that. That's God put that in us. But we have to learn to be happy where we are. And
Mhm.
so with Chris, I don't know. So a counselor, he said, when I told him, I said, well, he's short. And he said, when I grow up, that won't bother me. And I was like, well, that wasn't very nice, but that was true. And then I was also like, I don't know, and I was telling him, I said, if Chris found somebody else, I'd be happy for Chris, but I would really miss him. And he said, isn't that what true love is? When you want better for them, for yourself? And I was like, oh no, don't tell me I fell in love. It's like, no way. But that's what happened. And
Oh,
then
wow.
in it because he was my best friend. And I
Yeah.
think that if we could go instead of, for lack of better words, jumping into bed with everybody, if you
Hmm.
could actually get to know the person and find out if you even like them first. I mean, gracious, people just don't. And have my husband used to say, he says this too, that women should be destinations, not drive-throughs.
Mm.
You can
Yeah,
think
that's
about that.
good.
And it
Yeah,
is. We should be a destination. We shouldn't be a pit stop. If somebody doesn't really care about being with you or doesn't want to, then they're not right for you. Maybe,
that's
they'll
right.
grow up and they may be, but don't settle. And I think that's the biggest thing. Don't settle. And
Mm.
also don't look at what you think, the tall, dark, handsome, whatever. They're wonderful too, but that may not be who God has intended for you.
Yeah, I mean, Jim and I laugh at that very point where when I first saw him playing tennis, I guess, my youngest had almost was great. He was in college then of the four. And I think the other three had already married and started their families and they were out of the house. But he was not exactly my type, my quote type. And I did not give him the time of day. And he was very nice. He was nice enough, but there was something so reserved in me. Like I would be so nice to all the other guys I wouldn't even be remotely attracted to, but to Jim, I just maybe inside I thought, well, there could be something there because he was giving me a lot of attention actually. And even as that relationship evolved, all the friends there, and then we transferred over to pickleball and playing pickleball, they knew months and months in advance what was really going on. I just didn't see it. And I had all these rules like you can't text me. And, um, I don't know how he actually survived all of that and made it through and was so persistent. But ultimately, I marvel at God's selection for me, and that by his grace, I didn't just shut that door because maybe, I didn't know how to date, or maybe I was afraid in some ways, or maybe, that's maybe is he really who you have for me, Lord? That those kinds of thoughts. I'm so grateful that Jim persisted and that I finally was open to having a relationship. So, man, it's tricky when you're dating after and you're even thinking about remarriage, because I knew I didn't want to date casually. I don't have time for that, for one thing. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want to
Right.
introduce somebody to all my kids. And I mean, how would that work?
Right.
You
I
know?
think you have to look at that. I mean, you don't want someone to be in your kid's life if they're not going to be more of a permanent figure, or if they're
Yeah.
not going to be nice.
Mhm.
I think one thing for me, what was really hard, and a counselor had said this, I said, he said, some women could look and see what, a guy is like by just looking at him. They can tell what he's like. And they would cross the street to avoid him. And I remember I told him, I said, I want to be one of those, gals that could tell what someone is like. But I'm not. I usually see the positive in everybody. And
Mhm.
so I have to really, what I have to do, and I think it's biblical, is see their fruit. Does what
That's
they
good.
say actually match with their actions?
Yeah.
If they're yelling at somebody or cussing somebody out or cheating on this or doing whatever, and they say, I love you, this, I love the Lord, or whatever. No, something's amiss. Something's not right. So if their actions don't match their words, like if they say they love you, but they don't treat you that way, like you said, your husband, although you didn't really give him the time of day because you were afraid. I'm sure you were afraid. I know I was.
Yeah.
But he still pursued you in a loving way and let you have your space too.
Hmm.
And he showed it with his actions more than words, because he could have told you whatever and you're like done with that.
Right. Yeah, I will say he was very gentlemanly and very, very patient. I mean, my pickleball friends would be like, Victoria, why don't you see this? He adores you. He is so kind to you. I mean, if someone would so much as like, you get hit a lot in pickleball. I mean, it's a small court. People are slamming the balls at you, and you could be, at least 12 feet apart. That's really close for someone slamming a ball at you. And I know that they're plastic balls, but let me tell you, I have left with tattoos of pickleball, bruises, people, I mean, the blood. It's not that it's a real dangerous sport, obviously, but if anyone would even hit a ball at me, he would be like, look, you got the whole court. And why are you hitting it, Victoria? And I love that. It was kind of embarrassing in a way because we were just, not really anything at that point. But it was a level of protection and defense that was so endearing to me. I really, really like that. And I would be like, oh, he's so nice to do that, but I wouldn't let him know.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is men, their primary thing is being providers and protectors.
Mhm.
And when we take that away from them, we're taking away their core. And that's
Mm,
what, God designed them to be that way. It's not bad. It's not male chauvinistic. It's just their love for you. Like I always say, we want to know our husbands can beat us up. We don't want them to, though.
yeah,
I mean, keep
that's
strong.
right.
But the thing is like you said, to have that protection thing. And then some women, I know somebody that said that, a guy opened the door for him and they made a complaint to the school for
Oh
like the
my
dinner guy
goodness.
opened the door. I mean, it's like, where are we coming with this? It's like that is being a gentleman. I would open a door for somebody if they're carrying something, my turn. But we need to respect that and that role. It's not like a domineering role, because at the same time, right, they're supposed to, as Christ gave his life for the church, the same way that husbands should give their life for their wife.
Wife.
And I mean, that's powerful. That's a huge
Mm,
important role. And
mm,
I think so. One thing my husband did is he went to all my kids' activities, and he knew to get to my heart is to show care and compassion for my kids.
yeah.
And he went to everything. I never really asked him. He just would show up. He'd be quiet
Wow.
there, and he would show up and then support them and stuff. It was
How
really
how old were your kids at the time you met him? Roughly.
so my let's see, so 15 for my 15 and then like 11 and
Okay.
12. Right.
Okay. So they're kind of on the young side then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
mine were more adultish,
Mm-hmm.
and they had never seen a man introduced ever in
Yeah. Was that
all
harder,
those
you think?
years.
You think it was harder for them?
Possibly because they were like, these are my big men, my big grown men. I think, how old was William? He's my oldest. He must, I don't remember, but he was maybe close to 30 or something, and or 28. No, because he was born, they're old. Even my daughter's the oldest. And so it was them as adult men. They have their wives, they have their children, and now mom is suddenly interested in someone. They were extremely supportive and very interested, but I knew that I needed their quote approval. I also had a mentor and a small group of friends that I vetted Jim through, and he knew that. I'm like, I have walked with this mentor for decades, and she and her husband have just been lifelines in so many ways for me. I valued their opinion incredibly. And so we went to them and kind of opened our finances to them. And that was one aspect. And they met him for the first time. And we're just saying, we're laying everything out because we had some important decisions to make at the point we were considering, we were walking toward marriage because we were courting each other, dating with that intent in mind at the point that we decided we were dating. But, and I knew that if he didn't quote pass, that would be very difficult for me. Not that he had to pass their quote approval, but I really longed for that. And I wanted their discernment, their attention to be really, really, I wanted them to be on high alert as he met them and as we engaged. And matter of fact, I called the mentor, and she gets up so early, and it was like 5 o'clock, and I'm calling her on the phone, and I'm like, okay, I need to know. And she said, we love him, or something like that. And I was like, oh, thank you, Lord, because it would have been harder, not impossible, but a little bit harder. But my kids I needed that kind of stamp with them. I wanted them to be on board with this. And they can be really hard because these are now men who are kind of defending their mama. And they were they wondered when he wore a New England Patriots jersey. That's the first time they met him. They're like, Mom, what's he doing? He's just, what's he doing here? Because we're all Patriot fans. All my boys grew up Patriot fans. And so they questioned that, like, oh, Mom, we don't know, but a lot of kidding went into that, a lot of joking, but in the end they were all okay. And he just began coming to our Friday Family Fun nights. They met him actually playing pickleball. We played pickleball at a church, and that's where they first met him. But they said, we think he likes you, Mom. And I'm like, no, no, no. We just play ball together. I was still kind of in denial on all of that. But it's been such an interesting journey.
Yeah, they saw his actions.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, is everybody saw his actions and they saw what he was really like. And I think that's so important. If we hear like somebody says, I don't really like him. I mean, you're like, okay, that's one. But what about somebody else? If you have multiple of those, you probably need to reconsider the situation.
Really think about it. Yeah.
Yes.
How
Yes.
long was it after your first marriage ended that you did marry again? How many years were in there? Do you know, Nancy?
6 years.
6. Okay.
Yeah.
And you would say during that time you experienced considerable healing. I know that's a part of the work that you did in defying fear. You go into it in so many ways. It's about marriage and dealing with very, very difficult situations within a marriage. Yet, so it's not like, okay, I want to go become an entrepreneur and I want to sell my new cream pies, and I need to have courage to do that. It can be about that, but a lot of what you talked about was based on some real trying and challenging situations within marriage. So I'm thinking that in that time you had that's a pretty good time to heal and dig in and recover. Do I have that right?
Exactly. And the other thing is he really listened to me and I could ask him questions. I mean, he's a urologist, so I could ask him questions that he would know too. And I found out what was really supposed to be more normal.
Mm,
And that was very, very oh, what I was trying to say, just very soothing and very comforting and just very healing for me.
and
I didn't know. I didn't really know it was normal. Um,
isn't
and
that
so,
interesting?
yes, yes. I mean, you would think, but that's why I told him, I was like, I think you could talk to a lot of people because women don't know. We really don't. Guys know more about things than we do, I think, than women do.
Mhm. And
But
I that might be a case where comparing is kind of a good thing, as we're, we kind of started with comparing our, my ex-spouse never did that or whatever, but in this case we have a comparison that brings us into an area of our lives that we, or in this relationship, that maybe we hadn't had that before. And all we know really, even to compare, is our experience
right.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I guess I don't really think it's bad to compare if you're looking at what's improved.
Mm,
Share that. But if you're, because there's always bigger and better on the other side. I mean, the grass is always greener, but once you
right.
get there, it really isn't.
Right.
And so it looks like it, and that's what Satan does. It'll make paint this picture that looks like it, but it's not. And that's why I think it's okay to look back and see, because to me, that's more gratitude. What is better about how I am now, my
Mm.
relationship now, my spouse now? I think I mean, I'm all for hearing that I'm, better.
Oh, I
But
want to be too.
yeah,
We do want to be better. We want to grow in our faith, and we want to become more Christ-like, less of me, more of God. We do desire that. And one area that I do struggle with, and it doesn't necessarily have to do exclusively with my ex-marriage and that the whole relationship, but the area of trust is, have you struggled with that with your husband now? Was there, and if you did, how did you overcome that? You're smiling there. Yeah.
well, yeah, because I'm like, oh yeah. Um,
Okay.
so and I don't, he's very trustworthy. My husband is now, but I very much struggled with that. And I was very so insecure because of what had happened and stuff. And so I would call him and just be like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you, and just need that reassurance and stuff." I mean, it was like he's really a good guy to stay with me. I mean, because
Hmm.
I was just so petrified almost and just such a panic almost on stuff. And he would just, assure me, calm me down. And I think too that you can work on that. So like if something's driving you crazy, somebody's doing, it's like, hey, how about when on my way home, I give you a holler, call you.
Hmm.
And then that way it's kind of like they're helping to take that and then it's giving a little bit more trust with it and stuff too.
Mm.
But I think, if you feel like something's off, investigate it and see,
Hmm.
but if it doesn't come that you see it, then actually share that and talk about that and your
Hmm.
feelings with it. So there was a lot of that, but he was very good about talking to me and reassuring me because I really needed that. I mean, I
Mm.
really did at first. I really needed
Yeah,
that.
I have found that I needed that too, which really has surprised me in ways. I don't remember really struggling a lot with trust, and Jim has done literally nothing to raise a red flag in that area, if you know what I mean. I think like your husband, he's proven himself to be trustworthy. But I can struggle with jealousy, for example, or um I don't know, just insecurity. And it may be that I have not had to deal with these particular feelings in a long time. And so I'm evolving, as we go through this. And Jim and I talk a lot about this and go, we really roll it over every which way. And we're in prayer a lot about these kinds of issues because I think I need some reassurance sometimes, like you said, in very simple ways. And he's very willing to give it, the smallest things that he would think, oh, really? That you just want me to do that simple thing? And I'm like, yes, just that simple thing will help me. And then he does it repeatedly, and he knows, but he doesn't do it begrudgingly or with like, oh, here we go again, anything like that. He does it out of love for me because we are on the same team. And
Right.
we say that a lot together. We like hashtag best team ever. We use that a lot because it's so easy to look at another person and blame them or accuse them or get, I'm so upset with them, but really we need to step back from that. Or at least I try to train myself to step back and say, wait a minute, Jim is not my enemy. There is an enemy, but it's really not Jim. The Bible says that we don't wage war against flesh and blood. It's against the principality. There's something much greater at work, and I want to be on guard for that. And so we come at our problems that way, to where, wait a minute, we're on the same side. Let's figure out how we can resolve this together. Does that resound with you also?
Yes, and I think even to take it further is sometimes I didn't even know what was wrong, but I would feel something that wasn't right. And to talk that out, he allowed me to talk it out
Mhm.
for me to figure out what was bothering me, what was wrong. Like this, I'm not saying you do anything, but something doesn't feel right. This is making me have like PTSD, something.
Yeah.
And so, and that's the thing is we're not supposed to have all the answers. I mean, that's
Mm.
God's job, right? I mean,
Mhm.
who wants all that pressure? But to work things out, and that's where it helps to have someone that loves you enough and cares to do that, and that you can share and be open of, hey, that I don't understand, but this like I feel funny inside. And make sure you say me, not you did this, but I
Right.
feel something inside. I don't feel safe. I can. One time he got some news that was not very good news at all, and anybody would be really upset. And he wasn't. He was very upset. He wasn't mean to me. He wasn't like bad to me at all. But I like wanted to hide and go like crawl underneath the table and just hide because it scared me like I mean, so bad. And I remember talking to counselors like, um, you do know that he's gonna have bad days where he's not always happy. And I'm like, well, yeah. And he goes, but just because he's not happy doesn't mean he's gonna mad at you or that he's gonna yell at you. And I know that sounds silly, but for me, that was huge. I mean, that was like a pivotal moment. And that's what I
Yeah.
realized too. We had to work on just because I'm upset about something doesn't mean I'm mad at you. Because the
Mhm.
guys want to be a lot of times we want to be that caregiver and taker and fixer, like fix the problem. It's like,
That's
no,
right.
I'm sharing. I'm just trying to. And so that's what we had to realize too. Just because one's upset doesn't mean that we're mad at that person. It might be our situation. But I mean, seriously, it was like the counselor told me, he said, you're experiencing PTSD. I'm like, but what? Like, no, I'm not been in the army. And it's like, you can still have that trauma without being the typical what you think. And I think
Mm.
that was huge for me. Huge.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because I have been there. And I wouldn't necessarily say it was like PTSD, like you just said, for that reason. But Jim is so even keel. He is happy-go-lucky. He laughs a ton. He's well liked. Everybody has fun with him. He's not like it's not like he's quote the life of the party or something like that, but I can always hear him in a group laughing. Always I can pick out his laugh, even on the pickleball court. I mean, oh, he's having so much fun. Maybe the men are over there and the women are over here. He's just very gregarious and outgoing in that sense. But I remember one day in particular, he was off. And what I did is a cognitive distortion. I discovered this later that I personalized his behavior and I made it about me. And I was talk about thoughts. I was telling myself things like, gosh, I wonder what I did, or what did I say, or why is he so mad at me, or I don't know what's really going on with him. I mean, I went down so many rabbit trails, and his having a quote bad day became my issue. And I did not know how to handle that because it was not like who he was. And so it was so alarming to me. Like you said, you wanted to go run hide. I'm like, I just went to him and I'm like, I'm like, what have I done? Why are you mad at me? That's kind of what I said. Are you mad at me? Did I do something? Or is this, we're trying to reason through this. And he's like, no, Victoria, I promise this has nothing to do with you. But I persisted. And like later, and then I'm like, Jim, what's really wrong? I mean, it's like I didn't believe him. I'm like, I know this is something I've done. What did I do? Or I mean, it's crazy how my brain was taking us down that. And he's like, Victoria, you've got to let me have a bad day. It's just an off day for me. I'm not always like this. I won't always be like this, but I'm feeling a little just off. So let that be okay. I promise you, I'm not mad at you. I'm not angry. I'm not going to get up and leave. I'm not, I'm just having an off day. And gosh, goodness knows I have plenty of off days. And he just gives me space or whatever I need. It seems easy for him to do that. But for me, it was very difficult.
And remember what your mind thinks.
Mhm.
It cannot distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. So
Interesting.
it's easy to go down that. So if you're imagining this, your mind thinks the same thing. So, I mean, I use it analogy with doing, my half Ironmans. I picture myself crossing that line even before
Mm,
I did it because, and it's whatever it is. It may be, hey, I'm going to walk 3 miles or 1 mile. You picture yourself doing that. You first have to picture it because your mind cannot distinguish the difference of whether it's real or not. But if you see yourself, oh, I cannot do that. Oh, he's this, he's this, he's this, then you're going to like really start to feel that. And so that's where it's so important to be able to talk and share your feelings and also for them not to, or someone else or us to use the feelings that they share against them. That is really
mm,
bad. Like, well, you did it. Well, no. That's like a free do not bring up. They can share what they do. And it's
that's
not
right.
wrong what you felt. It's just wrong. You don't want to be stuck in that bad place.
That's right. I totally agree. And that's my papa calling. Sorry. I've got my family on overload or to where there's only phone that call that will ring is from my parents, and my dad's kind of ill right now, and so
Oh, I'm
he's
sorry.
calling, but I know
Did
what
he
he's
take it?
calling about. No, I know what he's calling about. He's calling about a new cereal he wants. We've already been talking about that, so I'll cut all this
Important
out.
stuff. You know
Yeah.
what? It's all perspective, and it is
That's
because
right.
you change, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. Well, I'm looking at some of these other thoughts that I don't know that I've actually had them. I do say this, I don't want to make the same mistakes I made in my first marriage. But to me, that I'm not bound by that as a fear. It's more of a heart cry toward the Lord. Like, Lord, we are a cord of three strands. We, as a married couple, are keeping you on the center of our hearts to the very best of our ability. We desire to do this marriage your way. We long to have you demonstrated and manifested in our lives. We want to be an example of a godly Christian marriage for our children and for others even. And I know the mistakes that I made in my first marriage, and truly I don't want to repeat those, but I don't live by that fear. Do you have any of those thoughts ever going on?
yeah, I mean, it's easy to recreate the same problems if you don't change who you are.
Mm,
So, and that's, I think, almost every year to do a reassessment. I mean, he retired. So that's been really hard, go from a surgeon working
wow.
tons and stuff to retired. And that's really hard for him. So right now it's trying to find that new, balance or rhythm, I like to say. And I think because no matter if it's a retirement or your kids leave the house or you have a new kid or you get a new house, whatever it is, it's all can be stressful. So you have to learn, I think, to work together during that stress or you're going to butt heads. And I think
Mm,
that's the tough part. I know my husband, when he had cancer, something I always say, marriage is not 50-50. And people are like, what do you mean it's not 50-50? But I think it's 100%, 100%. And the reason why I say that is like when my husband had cancer, he was given 100%, but it was probably 10% of what he normally did. Okay.
wow.
So you should always give 100% of what you're capable of giving. And sometimes, but together, hopefully between the two of you, you'll equal at least 100%. But so I gave a lot more, but really he gave as much, but he just wasn't capable of it. So,
Yeah.
but we're always like 50. No, why would you give just 50% of what you have? You should give 100%. And then that way they'll help you out and you help them out so that when there's something trauma goes on, then, or some stressor, and that's another thing. Stress can be good and bad. So that's why, you work on it. How do you manage that? Do you yell at each other or do you come together and talk and discuss why I'm feeling this and I'm feeling frustrated, whatever? But always to give 100% each round.
Oh, I love that. Sometimes I go to gym and I'm like, okay, I can give you 20%, but I'll give you 100% of my 20
Yeah.
because that is such a good reminder that it's situational and we have each other's backs and we are best team ever. Hashtag. And it's a team effort. If someone's injured on the same team, everyone else kind of has to step up a little bit because we're all going toward the same goal. We want the same end result here, but we may have to sometimes cover the, but that's why I love pickleball. And you also mentioned, I'm going to show my book for everyone who
Yeah.
maybe hasn't seen it,
Yay.
but you mentioned an annual checklist. Well, in the back of the book, this is kind of a little bonus. I don't really say it very often, but it has what we call monthly marriage tune-up questions. And there are about 15. There are 15 of them. And so Jim and I do a date night once a month because we're with each other a lot, but we take turns surprising each other to go do something. And so on that night, we also grab the book, grab the questions, and we just go through them together. I mean, just to give you an example, one is, what am I doing now that you especially enjoy? What's one of your favorite traits of the spirit that I demonstrate? Are there any household chores or duties you wish I would take over? Are there any you prefer for us to do together? Because we had this big thing about the dog poo in the backyard. It's on a podcast episode.
That's a whole podcast itself,
It
right?
is. Yes, it was. It's like, okay, who's
That's
doing
right.
that? And here's 17 pounds, Jim. Look what I got. And ugh, it was not pretty. What do you love the most about our sexual relationship? What might you change? Describe our friendship. Are you content with our emotional, physical, and intellectual intimacy? Do you feel challenged in any of these areas? How might I help you feel happier? On a scale of 1 to 10, I love scales. With 10 being the strongest, how connected would you describe our overall level of connectedness? Do you have any areas of insecurity within our marriage? And what might I do to help you feel more secure, safe, or protected? Is there anything I've stopped doing that you used to like? Um, is there anything I do that you'd like me to change? Do you know why this is important to you? What's something specific I can do this week or month to help you feel loved or supported? Have you been hurt recently? Has this issue been resolved? What would offer you the greatest healing? Are there any areas of unforgiveness toward me that you're harboring? In what ways are you keeping God at the center of your relationship with Him? How are we doing as a couple? What can I pray for you this week? Are we spending enough time together, or do you need more space for anything? So that, I actually didn't intend to read all of them, but they're so good. And I'm like, oh, as a woman, I love these questions. Sometimes this Jim is like, okay, let's do this, but after we get into it, it's over a meal. There's nothing charged about it. And we are determined to be transparent and honest and open because we want to do this right. And I don't know, what did you think about that monthly tune-up?
Well, what I think is really neat is that you write a book just not to write a book, but you actually write it, so good that you actually refer to it yourself. I mean,
Mm.
that's amazing. And I think those are excellent questions. And I think, like you said, they say, and I know from you do coaching and stuff too, but like 15 minutes a day, one on one, put the phone down, look at each other. You're like sitting across, interacting for at least 15 minutes a day to catch up, whatever it is. And then, take that time every week, just to do like an hour kind of thing. And then do, like you said, monthly to do the couple
The
hours.
the deep dive. Yeah.
Yes. deep dive. And then so that way and then, yearly to get away, to clean, get away from everybody and everything, just the two of you, I think is huge.
Yeah.
But yes, to have that time where you're spending in doing and asking those questions. Because the thing is, I mean, we kind of like those, I think, as women better than the guys.
We
But
do.
once they get into it,
They survive. They
that's right.
manage.
They do. And I remember one thing, I can remember this like it was yesterday. When I was going through some really hard times, and my husband said to me, he said, "Where's your faith?" And I was like,
Mm,
"What?" And I thought, and I said, repeated to him, I said, "Remember when you said that to me?" And I said, "I'm gonna ask you that now." And he's, "Well, I don't remember saying that." But it was so profound and yet
yeah.
so simple. And that's the thing is, where's your faith when you're going through that hard time?
Mm,
And that's where you're gonna have to deal on your faith, but the other person should support you in doing that.
that's
And
right.
like you said, going through those questions just helps promote. And you know what? You don't know what you don't know. If you're not told, how can you be mad at somebody if you don't really know? But who
Yeah.
wouldn't want to know, hey, do this for me would really make me happy?
That's right. And Jim told me something that I didn't even know bothered him. I totally missed it. And it was kind of small, but I changed my behavior as a result of that because I just didn't know. But and otherwise, what could have happened if we hadn't had that moment of transparency is he could have harbored that a little bit or become bitter about it or resented that. And it was just building up in him. And then I was totally clueless. So that's why I think those monthly checkpoints or those deep dives are so important. I don't know if you've heard the guy who said he does rose, thorn, bud. And Jim and I started doing that as we're just, like pillow talk-ish as we're going to bed at night. It's like rose, and we'd share something that was wonderful that happened that day. And okay, he gives a rose, then I give another rose. And it's like a grateful gratitude exercise. And he gives the second rose. And then we tell a thorn, like something that was really troublesome or difficult for us that day. And then we do a bud, something that we're looking forward to. And it takes all of maybe 5 minutes, but it's just a tender moment at the end of the day when you can just kind of get on the heartbeat of your spouse and just say, hey, what's happened to you in your day matters, and I'm here, we're in this together, kind of thing. Have you ever heard of that? I cannot think of the guy's name. It's a weird long last name, I know, but
It's
it's
something like, I mean, that's wonderful. I think
isn't
that's
that neat?
yes, I think
Yeah.
that's really neat. And two, what
Yeah.
a nice thought to have before you go to
That's
sleep.
right. That's right. It's kind of on the uptick.
Mm-hmm. It is. And
Yeah.
I think all that stuff, it's like really almost like you're having a prayer with God too, because you're
Yeah.
working together. And I think he rejoices in that. I really do. And then
Yeah.
he feels that. And that's, you talked about too in our email as far as positive talk.
Mm,
And I think kind of leads into that. I mean, I think just with ourselves, that's so huge and so important. I mean, like to say, oh, I'm fat, I'm this, or I mean, just to repeatedly say that to yourself, God does not want that. He wants you to prophesy. It's not like fortune telling, but of what you want. And if you're always saying what you don't want, how's He going to give you what you need or what you want if you're always saying?
amen.
And I
Amen.
think that's huge. And I think too, like you said, the gratitude thing is saying the positive stuff, telling yourself. I mean, I had to do that because I had to give myself the words of affirmation. And I talk about that in my book, like you say, as far as giving some positive things, how to get yourself out of that rut. But
Hmm.
doing was it the saying, doing the definition of his insanity is doing the same thing every
Over and
time, expecting a
again.
different result.
Yep.
I mean, it's like, but we do it. And Satan does not work where it's like, boom, this big thing comes in. He does little steps at a time, just little bitty things, little
That's
bitty
right.
things. And so before you know it, boom, what happened? Why did this change? And that's why I
Mm,
think to do that reset, to recheck, like you said, the monthly thing, just to like establish, because otherwise you're resetting it. Otherwise, before you know it, Satan slipped something in there. And it's like now it's a big thing that really shouldn't have been. But it's so easy
mm,
to get
yeah.
stuck in that.
So good. So very good, Nancy. And I was going to say also there, it does say free gift inside. And that gift, I forgot to pull it out, but I want to show you. I think it's right here. Oh, hold on. Oh, rats. I don't have it handy after all. I should have thought about that. And I don't even know where it is, but it is 50 activities that you can do with your spouse. And some of them are a little cheesy. Some of them are very, very creative. And some of them are centered around pickleball, like maybe 10% or 20% are centered around pickleball activities, but otherwise it's really fun things that you can do, adventures, just to keep that romance alive, even because a lot of what we're talking about is a discipline and a desire to really pour into our relationships that matter, because otherwise, like you mentioned, they atrophy, they things like Satan, like you said, it's just that little teeny prick that keeps happening. If we don't pay attention to that before we know it, it can be something much bigger. So to turn all of that around and engage with our spouses, to affirm them, to be grateful for what they do, for speaking life over them and being positive with them and thanking them for what they do, it really does go a long way. It really does.
It does.
So.
What a great book. That's awesome. Really good.
Okay, you show yours and I'll show mine again.
Okay. All right.
Woohoo. So I
Woohoo.
want you to get Dr. Nancy Meyer's Defying Fear. I want you to run out and get that. And of course, get the pickleball book as
Yes, get
well.
the pickleball book and save your marriage.
That's right. It's called Pickleball Passion.
That's
So
right.
come on now.
We,
Truly, I mean, people are telling me, just last night, Jim and I were playing pickleball on indoor court here in Lexington, and one of the guys, he and his wife were there, and he's like, Victoria, we love your book. And it's just so nice. It's people say it's funny. I didn't really intend for it to be funny, but it struck a chord as being kind of whimsical and spot on. So, you
that's your
know,
personality though, because
I
you're
hope so.
spunky and you have that. That's good to see it,
Aw, well,
carried over.
thank you.
That's good.
Yeah. So who knows what's next? I think what's next is going to be the non-dating for success book. I think
Yeah.
that's what we'll do next. What's next for you, Nancy?
Well, it's just doing the speaking engagements and stuff is what I really feel. And then actually doing some type of Bible plan stuff, I think is the next
What do you
thing.
mean
But
Bible plan?
just either like a Bible study type thing, something like that. So that's what,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if you
um,
need an endorsement, right here.
all right, I appreciate that. So, yeah, and I got my 50 reviews on Amazon for the book,
Wow.
so I'm excited about that. So,
Oh my gosh, that people don't know how hard that is.
yeah.
They do
So,
not know how hard it is to
I
get a review. So
yeah.
good for you. That is
So I'm like,
amazing.
woohoo! So,
Yes,
but
that's worth celebrating.
and I just want to say, love your spouse, but also love yourself. Because one of the best
Amen.
things you can do for your spouse and for your kids and everyone around you is to take care of yourself and to
Mm,
love yourself and to learn to do that. Not in an arrogant way, but is in a way that Christ loves us, that we're so unshakable value that he has in us through Christ. And I think that's just huge. And, people are like, oh, exercise and stuff. But if you do that, whatever that is, it helps you to feel better about yourself and then helps you to be better, whatever that is.
wow, what a wonderful way to end this interview too, or this conversation that we've had. That's amazing. And I will put all the links so that you can get in touch with Nancy today, get her book and be encouraged, and follow her, connect with her. Maybe you need a speaker at your church or your women's organization. She is your gal. So thank you so much, Nancy, for coming on
Thank
the
you.
show
I always
again.
enjoy talking with you. You're such a blessing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.